Dave is going to preach to us tonight about the topic he has. But before he does, he's going to come and show you some slides of some ministry that they're involved in and helping in India. So, Brother Dave, you come on in.
Can you hear me? No, it's not part of the message. You're welcome to record it if you want.
I haven't seen him before.
I can step down here. Okay. There'll be a break before I do the message. So thanks, Rick, for the opportunity. I appreciate that. And I don't know if some of you were able to attend the presentation at 4 o'clock this afternoon. And I thought Des and Matt did a great job. And I'm going to try to build on some of that here tonight. So thanks for the opportunity. And let's get started here. What I want to share with you tonight, this is about the Gate Ministries, which is a ministry in India. It's a mid-Acts dispensational ministry. And you can see on there at the bottom there it says, the Gate Ministries is an affiliate of Columbus Bible Church, Columbus, Ohio. One of the things that Des spoke about this afternoon was having a single point of contact for some of the overseas work that's being done. And so Columbus Bible Church serves as that for the Gate Ministries, and so I'm honored to be able to present to you tonight. So let's jump in here. That is Thomas George. Thomas George is the chairman of the Gate Ministries, and let me tell you his story because it'll be helpful in understanding what's going on here. So he's a long-time Pentecostal, and he's actually he was a leader in the Pentecostal church in the Middle East. And through various things, he comes to understand right division. And so he first comes to understand it, and I feel like I'm walking through a maze or something. He doesn't say anything at first because he's coming into the knowledge of it. But then he sort of comes to the point where he's like, no, I see it's true, and I just need to teach it. So he starts teaching right division. How do you think the reaction is to that in the Pentecostal church? Right? It's not favorable. And so Thomas reached out to us and he said, I need spiritual support. And I don't know about you. Do you ever get emails from overseas where you wonder about them? I do. And so he reached out for spiritual support, and I said, well, let's talk about this. What do you mean by spiritual support? And when I had the conversation with him, what he really wanted was three things. He wanted mentorship, answers to questions, and endorsement. It wasn't about money. And I said, well, tell me more about this. So mentorship, Thomas, despite being in the Pentecostal church for a long time and coming into right division, he realized, I need mentorship. I need someone to help bring me along in the faith. I said, well, sure, we'll do that to the best of our ability, however limited it is. With answers to questions, here's what happened. So Thomas comes to right division as a Pentecostal. What are all of his Pentecostal brethren doing? Well, they're all figuring out all of the objections to dispensationalism, right? And they're hitting with them again and again and again. And so Thomas said, I need some help answering the questions. I said, well, I've had those same rocks thrown at me, so I can maybe help you with that some. And then the part about endorsement, you all know that when you teach right division, what do people say? Who else believes like this? Now, is that a good argument? That is a dumb argument, right? There were 8 people on the ark. So when someone says, who else believes like this, it's a stupid argument. But here in the States, if someone says, who else believes like this, I can point to all of you, right? You can say that. There's lots of other grace churches. There's dozens of other grace preachers. He didn't have that. So what he concluded was he needed the support, he needed the endorsement of a Western ministry, and so we were happy to, help with that. What he's doing currently, he's somewhere in the Middle East. He's a petroleum engineer. And I mentioned the petroleum engineer to say this. Thomas has never said, send me money. And what he's basically said actually is, look, I'll take care of the money. I just need the spiritual support, the training to do the work. And so what he's doing is he's working and has a ministry in the Middle East where he's stationed, but his intent is to go back to India full time when he's able to do that. And he's from a southern state, Kerala. And what he has a heart to do is to go back to Kerala, reach India, and reach the Malayali community around the world. So I've been very impressed by him in terms of, I think he's a sincere and honest guy. This next slide, this is the leadership of the Gate Ministries. You see Thomas in the center. He's the single point of contact for it. He's the leader of it. I'm there on the left. Thomas put in the word patron there when he built this deck, and when he put that word in there, I thought, well, is this like I'm supporting an art show, or what is this? And I looked it up, and the first definition in American Heritage Dictionary is supporter. And so the way that I view what we're doing is I view it as supporting him in the work that he's doing. The gentleman on the right is a brother that's come in to help Thomas with the work of the ministry, and he's leading the section of the ministry that focuses on the Hindi language and northern India. That's a picture of Thomas and his family. You can see Thomas, his wife, and then his two children. Both of his children right now are in college/graduate school, and both of them are going through the Approved Workman Institute training that I'll tell you about in just a minute. But the reason I share that with you is he has the support of his family, and I anticipate that both of his children will be working in the Gate Ministries as part of their life's work. That's Biswajit and his family. Biswajit was a gentleman where he was a long-time watcher of YouTube videos that we put on the web, and so I was familiar with him. And when we made an announcement that we were supporting Thomas, Biswajit reached out and said, hey, what about me? I want to be part of this. And what Des mentioned earlier today that I thought was helpful is it's very difficult. Do you really know what's going on 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 miles away? Can you really identify what's legitimate and what's not? And it's just very difficult. So consistent with that thinking, I contacted Thomas. I said, Thomas, we've received interest from Biswajit. I think he's a good guy, but I don't know. Can you talk to him? And so Thomas reached out to him and was impressed with his sincerity and his commitment to the message. And he said, look, you just need to be part of what we're doing. And so that's how Biswajit came to be part of the group. This slide is what Thomas calls the inner circle. And just to give you some context, he's had tremendous response to the videos that he's released. And he's had people reach out to him that want to be part of the work that he's doing. And so what he's done is he's picked a ministry team of the folks that were the most capable and committed, and many of them have ministry experience, and that's what he calls they're the inner circle. One thing I'll mention just as this is fascinating to me, but he has shared when he goes back to Kerala, so he's in the Middle East, but when he goes back to visit, when he walks on the street, people will say, oh, you're the YouTube guy. Now, I don't know about you and your ministries, but how many times do people stop you and say, I've watched your grace ministry on YouTube, and I need to tell you how much I appreciate it. That's a fairly uncommon thing, but God has blessed the work that's being done there. So this slide is an overview of the ministries that they're doing. And so I'll start with the YouTube ministry at the top. You can see the number of videos. They have a little over 11,000 subscribers. The YouTube channel was launched in August 2019. Now, I'll just give you this as context. The church website that we have was launched a couple years before that. We have half the subscribers that Thomas does. And it's just, God has blessed that ministry in terms of reaching the Indian people. I'll show you one or two things real quick here. Here is Thomas's YouTube channel. These are the videos. And what I've done here is I've ranked them in popular order. So I'll just show you this. The first video has 137,000 views, and then you can see 39, 32, blah, blah, blah. I'm going down here. There's how many of those videos that all have over 14,000 views? And what's happened is God has blessed Thomas's teaching and that he's reaching Malayali people with the truth. I'll show you real quickly his website here. I have the most beautiful webmaster in the world, okay? Now, you may think your webmaster is cuter than mine, but you're wrong, okay? Okay? I just want to be clear about that. But Thomas has a really good one, too. And just as I flip through here, I show you this because I just want you to sort of see the degree of professionalism and the capability of his technical team. He's not a fly-by-night guy. He's a very serious professional, and the stuff that he does is very quality. So you can visit that. It's thegateministries.net, but I just wanted to sort of show you that. So the YouTube ministry you see there. The next ministry right below it is the Gate Church. So let me tell you about the Gate Church just a little bit. So as Thomas was teaching and people were coming to see Right Division, they essentially complained to him and said, Thomas, we don't have anywhere to fellowship together as a church. And so he said, okay, well then I'll create something. So he created the Gate Church as a virtual church service, and they have that on a weekly basis. You can see there's worship in over 40 different locations. So the Malayali community is not just in India. It's in Canada, it's in the United States, it's in Australia. So there's people all around the world that are part of that ministry. At the bottom there you see the Gate, North India, and we'll talk about that in just a couple more slides. On the top right is the school of Taranis. We'll talk about that. And then Approved Workman Institute is a pastoral training school that is being conducted right now. We started that in March. There's 32 students, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in just a minute. The last thing there is the Gate TV. What that is, Thomas decided that he wanted to create a 24/7 channel to teach grace doctrine in English, Hindi, and Malayali. And so that's another thing that he's created. The basic idea of this slide is simply this. He's trying to, through the different mechanisms and ministries available, reach out to people with grace truth. They preach Christ crucified. This is the Gate Church. This is their online Sunday worship. If you see the top slide here, if you see this gentleman here holding the microphone, I think the best analogy I can give you is Marvin Taylor. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. I was like, what did I step in now? I mean, come on, I'm trying. So Marvin, I think this is fair. Marvin was such a talented singer that he was recognized as such beyond grace circles, right? There were other Christian folks that recognized him as a great talent and his singing to be a blessing. That gentleman's name is Emmanuel Henry, and he's that same thing. So that's a real sort of coup or blessing to have him as part of their ministry. Those things they're very well produced if you look at those videos. The School of Taranis. Thomas created this as a weekly Zoom call to teach people right division. He started it in January. Now, if you notice on the bottom right, there's over 1,500 active viewers. So he's teaching people grace truth all around the world. And then I want you to focus on something on the left-hand part of that slide. So what do they cover in the school of Taranis? Well, they cover the KJV, obviously, but look at the second item, the Bible, the big picture. And so one of the books that Thomas really loves is, where's John? There you go. John and Lori. And so I'm sure you get comments like this all the time, but he loves that book and he's teaching it to people around the world. So thank you for making that available. It's been fantastic. The next one is Through the Bible in 7 Hours. They're going through that as well. And what he's done is he's taken the best teaching materials that are available and using them to teach folks the grace message. So that's the School of Taranis. This is the Gate TV. So what this is this is the 24/7 channel. As you look at those slides, you'll recognize some of those folks. And same thing there. So just a word of thanks to all the brethren that were very kind. I reached out to many of you and said, would you be willing to let us use your video content? And so thank you for that. And so if you're interested in being part of that, feel free to reach out to me and let me know. But there's people around the world watching that. The Approved Workman Institute. So here's what this is. So Thomas felt the following need. They're trying to get as many folks trained in the grace gospel as they can. So by way of context, India has 1.4 billion people. The United States has 300 million. So they have 5 times the goal of people to reach with a fraction of what we have, right? So they're trying to train people as quickly as they can. So his ask was, we need a training program. It needs to be a year, can't be longer than a year. It needs to be free. It needs to be accessible anywhere in the world, available 24/7, and we need to start quickly. So what we developed is the following, and I appreciate the brethren that have helped with this, but we've created those 7 modules there, and I'll just say a bit about this. Fundamentals of the faith. Des received a question in the earlier session today. What is the greatest denominational spiritual competition to what we teach? And Des's answer was Pentecostalism. That is the same answer in India. Thomas comes from a Pentecostal background. Many of the folks there come from a Pentecostal background. So fundamentals of the faith, that is designed to give people some basic skills as well as to equip them to answer the errors of Pentecostalism. The second thing is defense of the gospel, and the idea there is to just get them absolutely rooted and grounded in the grace gospel. The third is right division. The fourth is believers walk. And what we do is we provide the folks the notes, we provide them the videos. One of the points Des made earlier, I keep quoting him, but I think he did a great job, and I think he was spot on. When you're trying to evaluate what's going on overseas, I think Des is correct when he says the following. You don't want to just speak with the person that's your contact. You want to speak with the people they're training, right? Because when you speak with the people they're training, you'll get a sense of what they're learning. So what we're doing with AWI is we're having monthly Zoom calls where it allows me to connect with those folks and allows me to evaluate what they're learning and to be satisfied that progress is being made. And then if you see the last 3 modules there, defense of the KJV and church history, Thomas requested those modules, and in my mind it was just obvious that the grace guy that is doing the most in terms of defending the King James Bible is Brian Ross. And so I reached out and asked Brian to help with that. Brian's Grace History Project, it was a little concise and short and didn't have enough lessons. So I asked him to expand it to 700. We selected a few, is what we did. And then local church, the single person I have relied on more than anyone else over my ministry for guidance and counsel on local church issues has been Matt Hawley. And so he was the right guy to do that, so I asked him to do that. And then if you look on the next slide here, what we've also done with AWI is we've tried to get people to read the best materials. And so we asked Rick, and he was kind enough to let us use Through the Bible in 7 hours. We asked John and Lori, and they were kind enough to let us use the Bible, the big picture, and you can see some of the other things there. But the idea is to try to get folks as established as quickly as possible for the work. Okay, this is a summary of their outreach ministries. The key thing here is they have a presence in 4 states in India. There's 24 more states to be reached. Let's just look at a map to understand what's going on. So if you look at the very bottom of the map, if you look at the red rectangles, there's 4 red rectangles on the screen. So the bottom is Kerala. That is the state that Thomas is from. If you look at the top, the green, Uttar Pradesh, that is where Biswajit is from. If you look at the purple one, Maharashtra, I hope that's right, that is Thomas P.K. And then Orissa or Odisha, it's the same thing, just different names. That's Thomas P.K. So one thing I'll just note on this before we move on, it's kind of curious that in those 4 different sections, 3 of the individuals have the name Thomas, right? Thomas George Casey, Thomas P.K. What's going on there is this. It is commonly believed in India that it was the Apostle Thomas that reached India with the gospel. And so it's common among Christian people to use the name Thomas. So when you see that, you're typically seeing someone that was raised by believing parents, and that's why they have the name. It's not a guarantee, but that's often the case. If you look on the right-hand side, you can see that India is 80% Hindu, 14% Muslim, Christian 2.5%. If you look at the bottom there, the total estimated Christians in India is 28 million. The total number of grace believers is less than 5,000. That's the estimate that we have. So the work that is set before them is absolutely massive. And so let's look at individual places. So this is a picture from Kerala, and I'll just make 1 or 2 observations. If you see the gentleman at the top, you see how he's out preaching on the street and he's got his speaker on top of his car. One of the things they're doing is they're driving around and just preaching to folks using the car. And I've seen videos of this, and it's, as best I can tell, it's really happening, and there are people actively trying to get the message out. Now, Kerala will ultimately be the place when Thomas returns full-time. That's where he will build their base of operations, where he'll build their administrative offices, their headquarters, to reach the rest of India. You can see there that they have 3 local churches, 4 different YouTube ministries. Thomas didn't want to include this slide. I asked him to strongly, and I just share this with you because I thought it was fascinating. So why am I sharing with you a slide of a cemetery? Like, what would be the point of that? Here's what happened. As Thomas was teaching people the grace message, what happened was there were people in local churches in India, and their preachers didn't like that they were listening to Thomas. And so what they said to them was, if you don't stop this, we're not going to bury you. And what happens here in the United States, the way that you think of your funeral plot typically is you buy it yourself, right? You individually purchase a spot and you own it and so on. The way it works in India, and I don't fully understand this, but most Christians there are buried through their local church. And so what was happening is people were listening to Thomas, their preachers didn't like it, and they said, knock it off or we're not going to bury you. And so people would complain to Thomas and say, look, we'd rather listen to you, we want to follow your ministry, but we're concerned that we'll die and we won't be buried. So Thomas decided, well, I guess the thing I have to go do is I have to get in the cemetery business. And he went and he purchased a lease, and they have the right to bury enough grace believers there that now when the preachers say, quit listening to him or you won't be buried, he can say, we've got you covered. Literally. I didn't mean to be funny. One point on this before we move on. That demonstrates why overseas work must be local. If you had asked me, is the problem in reaching India we need more cemetery plots, I would have said no. Like, we're preaching to live people, not dead people, so what do we need? Why do we need that? But there are issues in the culture, and there are things going on that you cannot know from afar, so you have to find the right local leader. You have to make sure he's the right guy, and then you have to let him handle the local problems. We're not going to be able to do it from this far away. Odisha. So this is the section on the northeastern part of India. You'll see there are 2 local churches. They have mission stations in 8 districts. So what does that mean? When they have a group of believers, listen to this. When they have a group of believers that's less than 20, they don't call it a church. It's a mission station. When it gets to the point where they have more than 20 folks and a place to meet, then they call it a church. That's just their terminology. But the thing that I find exciting about that is from the time he started this, they're in a position now where they have 8 burgeoning churches that are in the process of being established. At the bottom there you see they have 13 pastors being trained. Those folks will be equipped then to lead those local churches. Uttar Pradesh. So this is where Biswajit is from, and what these pictures are on the left is from a recent conference he was asked to speak at 700 kilometers away. And so he went there and presented to them. Debbie was very helpful in that they needed the chart. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see this on the screen, but the gentleman on the left there holding up the chart, he's holding it upside down. And what's going on is they had so many charts, they distributed them to the crowd. They're holding them up over their heads so everyone around them can see. His is upside down. The chart was not familiar to him. Right? Right? But there's opportunities being opened like that. One of the points Des made earlier, which I think is true, the money we invest there, if wisely invested, goes a long way. So I'm fortunate to be part of Ohio Grace Ministries with Ted and Ed and Matt, and I think of what we spent on our recent conference. They hosted a conference that size or greater for $1,000 in India. So there's great opportunity there. Here's the 4th region, and this is Maharashtra. They have 32 local churches. They have 2,500 souls following the grace gospel, around 50 pastors. Now I'm just going to read to you part of the email that Thomas sent to me. I'm just going to read it to you as he wrote it. Pastor P.K. Thomas is stationed there and doing a tremendous job to train them on right division. The 50 pastors there are right division pastors, but they need more in-depth training. It is a tribal area and very poor. Our treasurer visited them last week for 7 days to assess the situation and to have fellowship with them. I was constantly in touch with them, and they consider me as Paul and are wanting to see me passionately. I am planning to go there by November this year with the aim to conduct 2 to 3 full-day training sessions to at least 100 leaders and then support them to spread the gospel. It is very fertile soil, and we can save hundreds of souls following the grace gospel rightly divided. They are poor people, but very dedicated and passionate about the cross of Christ, and we are convinced that they are not after money. Now I want to read to you one verse on this. 1 Corinthians 1:26. For ye see your calling, brethren, how that not many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. Now you can decide if this is true or not. What I find in life is that the people that are the most well-to-do, established, successful in worldly affairs have the least use for the gospel. Amen. And doesn't 1 Corinthians 1:26 say that? That the gospel is going to bear more fruit among the outcast of the world. So one of the things that I find absolutely fascinating is in that tribal area that is very poor, there is the opportunity for just numerous people to be saved. And so praise the Lord. Praise the Lord for that possibility. This is a summary of the look-ahead plans, and I'll just go to this slide for time. Here's the immediate plans, what they're going to do. They want to plant more churches. They have 4 states where they have a presence, but they want to build out there and then move on to other areas. The second thing is the administrative office that they want to establish in Kerala. The third is village and public ministries. The village and public ministries is particularly fruitful, as we just talked about. And then the fourth one, which is, I'd call that a stretch goal, reach all India with the grace gospel rightly divided. I'll just say this. So many people have helped with this ministry in various ways, helping with supplying video content or books or all sorts of other things. And so just a big thank you to everyone that has done that. That's Thomas on Joel's podcast. And I'll just close with thanks. Thanks, Rick, for the opportunity. And if anyone has questions or interest in this ministry, I'd be happy to answer your questions afterwards. And thank you very much. Thanks, Rick.